The storm came down in wild bursts that night, slamming against the apartment windows, as if the sky itself was trying to deliver a warning. That was the night everything in Daniel Pierce's world began to shift. He had just managed to settle his 5-year-old son, Liam, into bed after another draining day, balancing work, parenting alone, and the constant fear of their fragile life falling apart. His thoughts churned with worry, overdue payments, a school conference he had missed, and the terrifying possibility of losing the one job holding their world together. Then came a sudden, forceful knock that echoed through the narrow hallway, like a bolt of lightning hitting the building. When he opened the door, completely unprepared, he froze in place. His boss, Evelyn Hart, stood beneath the flickering hallway light, rain dripping from her hair, her expression impossible to read. And then she spoke the sentence that would set everything unraveling. "You left something important at the office last night." Her voice was steady, but her presence felt strangely fragile. Daniel's thoughts scrambled, trying to understand what she meant. Last night was a blur. Working late, rushing to pick Liam up from the neighbor's place, nearly dropping everything he carried as exhaustion tugged at him. He remembered apologizing repeatedly, mortified by how messy his life always seemed to be in front of others. He had assumed Evelyn hardly saw him beyond deadlines and performance reports. But her eyes tonight held a flicker of something else, concern, maybe even softness. Slowly, she lifted her hand. Resting in her palm was Liam's tiny blue mitten. Daniel's heart twisted. That mitten was a symbol of every worry he carried. Every night, he pushed himself to keep his son safe. To anyone else, it was nothing. To him, it was everything. A reminder of why he never had the luxury of falling apart. He muttered a breathless thank you, eager to retreat behind the door, to return to the small space where he allowed himself to crumble unseen. But Evelyn didn't turn away. Her voice dropped, heavy with something unspoken. She explained that she had stayed late finishing paperwork, and noticed how utterly drained he looked when he hurried out. She had followed him, mitten in hand, planning to return immediately. But when she saw the weight he carried, the way he held Liam's backpack like it was the last piece of his world, she hesitated. She had waited for the storm to settle. It never did. So she came anyway. Standing in the corridor of his crumbling building, her strict, professional exterior slipped just enough for him to recognize the truth. She wasn't just his boss tonight. She was another soul witnessing the silent battles he fought day after day. Inside his apartment, dim lights flickered over peeling wallpaper, and unopened envelopes stacked like threats on the kitchen table. Liam's crayons were scattered across the floor, bright fragments of childhood Daniel tried desperately to keep intact. Evelyn's gaze drifted across the room, not judging, simply taking the reality of a man doing everything he could. She whispered that Liam was fortunate to have a father who cared so fiercely. Those simple words cut deeper than she could have known. Daniel lived every day believing he was one mistake away from losing everything that mattered. Hearing someone acknowledge his efforts felt like a rare, aching relief. The storm howled louder outside, trapping Evelyn there longer than either of them expected. Minutes stretched into an hour, and Daniel found himself sharing pieces of his life he usually kept buried. He spoke about losing Liam's mother 3 years ago, about the emptiness that still clung to him every night, and the constant fear that he might never be enough for his son's future. Evelyn listened as if every word mattered. She stepped into his pain without pity, only empathy, and that quiet understanding began to dissolve the rigid lines separating employer and employee. In the days that followed, nothing visibly dramatic happened, yet the shift between them was undeniable. Evelyn began checking in on Daniel at work, not with the authority of superior, but with the concern of someone silently offering, "You don't have to carry this by yourself." She adjusted his hours when she could, defended his position during internal changes, and gradually carved out room in his life for him to breathe again. Daniel, who had spent years relying solely on himself, found his guarded heart beginning to trust her presence. She wasn't just helping him. She was becoming a part of the world he shared with Liam. But change never comes without trials. One afternoon, the school called. Liam was sick, burning with fever. Panic surged through Daniel as he prepared to race out the door. Evelyn stopped him only long enough to press her car keys into his hand. She knew his old car could fail at any moment, He hesitated, but the sincerity in her eyes silenced every refusal. Driving her reliable car through traffic, his hands shook, not from fear of the situation, but from the overwhelming realization that someone truly cared about his family. When Liam was finally resting with soup warming his stomach and medicine fighting the fever, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table. The tiny apartment felt different, softer, full of a warmth he had almost forgotten existed. Gratitude and confusion tangled inside him. Evelyn's involvement in their lives didn't feel like coincidence. It felt intentional, like fate placing a reminder in his path that the world still carried kindness. She saw beyond his struggles. She saw his strength. Their bond deepened slowly, no pressure, no rush, like dawn gradually pushing away the night. Liam adored her. Daniel depended on her. And Evelyn recognized the bravery behind every sacrifice he made. The protective walls around Daniel's heart began to crack, letting in a light he once believed he no longer deserved. Still, fear lingered. Could he allow himself happiness again? Could life really give him something beautiful after taking so much? But whenever he watched Evelyn kneel beside Liam, coloring with him, or reading stories softly until he fell asleep, those fears quieted. For the first time in years, his life didn't feel like a constant battle. It felt like a path with company. As months passed, the connection between them only grew stronger. Then, one calm evening, long after that stormy night changed everything, Evelyn stood at his doorway once more, not as his supervisor, not merely as the woman who returned a mitten, but as someone whose heart had found a home with them. Daniel's pulse hammered as she confessed that knowing him and Liam had changed her too, that they taught her a kind of compassion she never found inside polished offices and boardrooms. They showed her what it meant to care deeply for someone who built his life on courage and love. He didn't have the words to respond. He didn't need them. The emotion between them spoke louder than anything he could say.